balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, American Perspective viewers, and of course I got to give a call out to all the Whiskey Warrior P1s that are in the house tonight. Well, today is a day that did and does live in infamy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And our illustrious, not-so-with-it leader made the trek to France to commemorate the occasion. He spent a little bit of time in his speech apparently talking about all of the Russians dying in the Ukraine war. Don't have any idea what relevance that has to 80 years past D-Day. Honestly, I don't know, but apparently the guy whoever wrote his speech is just, they're definitely pandering to their electoral base for it. Oh my gosh. I feel so bad for the French having to deal with him. Also, too, he actually left early. Reportedly, Jill got him out of there. Don't know why. Not really too sure, but the French president hung around to thank a lot of the World War II veterans who had made the trek over there. And, it was just, let's just say it was pretty sad. Sort of. But of course, the left kept talking about, he is so, virile and full of life and gave a great speech and blah, blah, blah. Well, they've neglected to. Well, I got a couple of things about it here in just a little bit. But first, let's go ahead and get this kicked off. Yeah, let's go get this kicked off with Ms. T of Texas, who, well, that's what she goes by on Rumble. But anyway, she sent in tonight's Pledge of Allegiance. So please, if you are of mind, stand up, put your hand over your heart, remove your hats, so on and so forth. Let's pay respects to our American flag by doing the Pledge of Allegiance with Ms. T of Tex of Rumble fame.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you very much, Ms. T of Tex, for putting that in for that. And if you would like to hear your Pledge of Allegiance done on the program, send it off to my email address, fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And you too can be put in the rotation for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, tonight's sponsor is the wonderful shirts that I wear every single episode right here. Comes from theflagshirt.com. That's theflagshirt.com. And they are running right now a Flag Day sale, my apologies. A Flag Day sale where you get up to 50% off select patriotic styles. Go and check it out at theflagshirt.com. They also have 4th of July outfits, and free shipping is going on today on orders of $75 or more. Or if you just want to purchase one or two shirts and you want to get a little bit of a discount, go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online first and get yourself a code for $5 off your order at theflagshirt.com. That's right. Go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online to get yourself a $5 off coupon code that you enter in at checkout in the promo code box at theflagshirt.com. That's theflagshirt.com. Go and get yourself patriotized. All right. Well, I don't do this that often, but today is such a momentous day. I feel as though it would be remiss of me to not read from you on this day in American history. It's usually reserved for Saturdays, but tonight we're going to go ahead and read about this historic day. And, of course, for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb, chock full of all kinds of factoids about this great place that we call home, the American Great Experiment, or at least that's what they called it when we were the first place to put in a government that is supposed to be by, for, and ran by we the people. All right, today is June 6th. Obviously, it is the memorial, the 80th memorial of D-Day. Dwight D. Eisenhower once described the Allied forces assembled in Britain for the D-Day invasion of northern France as a, quote, great human spring coiled for the moment when its energy would be released and it would vault the English Channel in the greatest amphibious assault ever attempted. In the early hours of June 6, 1944, that tense, coiled spring was finally released as the Allied fleet reached Normandy. Hundreds of planes dropped paratroopers behind German lines to capture bridges and railroad tracks. At dawn, huge battleship guns began blasting away at German coastal fortifications. Amphibious craft landed on 5 beaches, and thousands of American, British, Canadian, and French troops fought their way ashore. U.S. forces landing at Omaha Beach struggled with high seas, fog, mines, and enemy fire that poured down from high bluffs. Many soldiers were shot, getting off their boats, and died in the surf. Those who reached the sand met a wall of bullets. One commander told his men that only 2 types of people would stay on the beach: those dead and those going to die, so they'd better push forward. In some units on Omaha, 90% of the troops were killed or wounded. The assault force managed to cross the beach and drive the Germans inland. At Utah Beach, another U.S. landing zone, the first wave of troops found themselves 2,000 yards south of where they were supposed to be. It was a lucky miss, since the area was not as heavily defended as the original target. Quick-thinking commanders ordered troops to follow the first wave ashore to secure a beachhead. Before D-Day was over, 155,000 Allied troops were ashore. Months of hard fighting lay ahead, but the Allies had at last established a toehold in Northern Europe. And that is today's On This Day in American History. Fantastical stories. People, we must remember what this country and its allies did on that fateful day over in Europe. It is just a massive undertaking. It was the biggest amphibious assault that has ever taken place in this world's history. So many people lost their lives just getting out of the damn boat. They couldn't even get onto the shore. In fact, reports are that at Omaha Beach, the sea itself turned red from the blood lost. And yes, Nana of JJS over on Rumble points out the greatest generation. That is correct. The greatest generation. Definitely the bravest generation as well. There were so many people that just, I mean, you can't even imagine what had transpired in that time. I mean, you know, Japan hit us, and we decided to join the war rather than just supporting our allies in terms of Great Britain and France and everything. We were in an isolationist period during that time prior to our engagement in the war. But once we got engaged, it went badly for the axis of evil at the time, and the Nazis in particular. But hey, I want to go ahead and show you a couple of articles that came out about this. Here we go. All right. So first of all, 80 years after D-Day, remember the men who liberated the world. This in the Federalist. Folks, we have to remember these things. You know, the left wants us to try and forget about the history of our past. And there is, I mean, people in history who don't remember history would be doomed to repeat it. But one key thing in this particular piece here, you can go and read it. But one key thing that I wanted to point out here was that the author mentions, yet despite of the importance of this mission, its memory fades with each passing generation. Folks, this is what happens. We need to remember these things. We need to remember these days. We need to commemorate these days, commemorate the people who are, honestly, many of them are gone already. I mean, think about this. This is the 80th anniversary of that day. Most of these people that were going in were just barely in their teens and early 20s that are still alive today. We need to make absolutely certain that days like this, days like D-Day, and by the way, it wasn't fought. The whole idea of us going over there, it wasn't for us to conquer Europe, to take over Europe, but take over its resources. World War II, in particular, was fought for freedom and liberation. That's what it was for. That is why most of the people who boarded those boats, went overseas, and did what they did in terms of the heroism, however you want to pronounce it, did what they did to fight the German army and the Japanese armies in the Pacific. They did it for one thing and one thing only, and that was for freedom. There's not a single person that I can think of today, especially on the left. The left doesn't understand what the word freedom means, what the cost of freedom is, and they don't. They just don't get it. Now, in the piece here, President Reagan warned us about this in his 1989 farewell address to the nation. He said, 4 years ago on the 40th anniversary of D-Day, and of course, keep this in mind, that was, 40 years ago, I read a letter from a young woman writing to her late father who'd fought on Omaha Beach. Her name was Lisa Zanata Helm. And she said, "We will always remember. We will never forget. what the boys at Normandy did. Reagan added, let's help her keep her word. If we forget what we did, we won't know who we are. But unfortunately, right now, we are not keeping our word. For one instance, one poll found that 12% of Americans thought Dwight Eisenhower fought in the Civil War, which ended 25 years before Dwight was born, instead of leading the D-Day invasion. Perhaps even worse, another survey found that only 43% of Americans know the real reason we celebrate Memorial Day. These sad statistics are just another example of how neglecting to teach American history in our schools has taken a toll on our national memory. Author continues, this is tragic. Perhaps it is our time for us as parents to do what else President Reagan encouraged us to do in his farewell address. An informed patriotism is what we want, he said. And are we doing a good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents in the long history of the world? All great change happens in America at the dinner table. So tomorrow night in the kitchen, I hope the talking begins. Folks, we need to make sure that we teach our children the value of American freedom. We need to stand up and proclaim the greatness that this country is all about. We need to make sure that our kitchen tables are more than just a gathering of people, but we also have to use them as a learning area for these kids. They need to understand what the cost of freedom actually is so that they don't fight it again. Sadly, I have a feeling that we're so far away removed from the horrors of war as of now that if it ever were to come into focus again, that we would be having all kinds of problems. We have what was at least the greatest fighting force this world has ever seen in the American military. And it's been permeated by the leftist ideology and has turned it into a very, very sad state of affairs. But the fact is that we must remember these days. We have to remember what occurred. The horrors of war, as well as all of the things that came out of it. There's another article here in Military Times where, and this is going to kind of make you a little sad, but this from the Military Times here. Last World War II vets converge on Omaha Beach for D-Day and fallen friends. Under their feet, the sands of Omaha Beach, and in their rheumy eyes, tears that inevitably flowed from being on the revered shoreline in Normandy, France, where so many young men were cut down 80 years ago. Veterans of World War II, many of them centenarians, meaning that they're over 100 years old, and likely returning to France one last time, pilgrimaged Tuesday to what was the bloodiest of the 5 Allied landing beaches on June 6, 1944. They remembered fallen friends. They relived horrors they experienced in combat. They blessed their good fortune for surviving, and they mourned those who paid the ultimate price. They also bore a message for generations behind them who owe them so much. Don't forget what we did. Lilliburn Bill Wall, who flew bombers in World War II and would celebrate his 101st birthday this week, said they probably wouldn't be here if we hadn't been successful. As decades pass, D-Day anniversaries in Normandy have become increasingly funfair-like, clogging the region's leafy roads with World War II-era fans dressed in uniforms and driving restored vehicles of the time. But the presence of an ever-dwindling number of veterans keeps the commemorations real, inevitably raising questions about whether the memories, pathos, and lessons of World War II will fade when they are gone. Walter Stitt, who turns 100 in July and fought in the tanks, surviving the destruction of 3 of them, said, there are things worth fighting for. Although I wish there was another way to do it than to try and kill each other, but sometimes you're called upon to do something and you just do it. You know, that's it. These people looked death in the face and just kept right on coming. All those young men that never had a chance to go home and find the love of their life and hold their children in their arms, he said on Omaha, wiping away a tear. On the bluffs above Omaha at Normandy American Cemetery, with 9,387 immaculately tended graves, 100-year-old Bod Gibson paid tribute to comrades who fell on D-Day when he landed on the other less bloody American landing beach, codenamed Utah, which I just told you about. You don't want other people to go through the same thing, he said, because I've seen a lot of these boys that never even made the beach, believe me. And we were all 18, 19 years old. I'm glad I made it. The old boy upstairs took care of me, he said, gesturing skyward. Folks, these are the men and women, because there were some women who took care of them, but these are the men and women who sacrificed so much in the face of fascism, Nazi terrorism, and the eventual potential destruction of the world, fought and won. Fought and won. And so, as a tribute, we send over our geriatric, oftentimes lost and definitely lost looking resident in chief over there to celebrate the D-Day ceremony. And apparently he couldn't quite figure out, at least according to this video, he couldn't quite figure out whether or not he was supposed to stand or sit. Take a look at this. For those on the audio portion, he just greeted the French president, and now he's trying to sit down.
The Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
And Jill is standing next to him, and she does this little thing where she put her hand over her mouth so that you can't see when she's talking, but she's obviously talking. You can kind of see the edge of her jaw working, and I don't know what she said, but I could just imagine, what in the hell are you doing? Yeah. And this is what we send over there. This is who we elected, and this is who we sent over there. I just don't understand it. I just don't understand it. And then he, went and invoked the Russia-Ukraine war in his D-Day address. Now, Russia, for those of you who don't remember history, Russia actually was an ally of ours. They were against the Nazis during World War II because the Nazis turned on them and attacked them. Even though they had a treaty agreement at one point. But they also suffered the highest death toll of the war, with at least 20 million people dead. And 16 days after D-Day, Soviet forces launched their own summer offensive called Operation Bagration, which destroyed Germany's Army Group Center and also accelerated the end of World War II. That defeat was especially damaging for the Third Reich, not least because of the 500,000 casualties they suffered, but also the core of Wehrmacht's officer corps was also either killed or captured. So he talked a little bit about it. I mean, I wouldn't have necessarily brought that up, but whatever. Well, then a little bit later, Biden apparently knew that he had to take off because he tells the, I don't know who he's telling. Let's take a look at this video and see. So he was talking to the president, the French president, on the red carpet as they were either walking in or something like that. And he made a comment about having to leave early. The quote that RNC Research pulled up says Biden was saying, "My advance team said I got to be the first one to leave." And then shortly after that, you can check out this video, which shows Joe and Jill walking out together, taking off early, while the French president goes and starts talking to some military leaders and thanks. He's gone over and shaking the hands and thanking of some of the World War II veterans in the video. And he's like talking to him, giving him hugs, that kind of stuff. But Joe Biden took off. Oh, yeah. Yep. So, that's what we had to look forward to on D-Day, on the 80th anniversary of D-Day. What's this guy? Oh, my gosh. It's just, I can't even, I don't even understand. I mean, how they can even bother to put, by the way, just to kind of move away from D-Day and talk about this, if you actually think that Biden, if you're a Biden supporter and you actually think that Biden is going to make it through a second term, you are not only stupid, but you are delusional. And I guarantee you that Kamala Harris is sitting in the wings, rubbing her hands together and cackling and going, I'm going to be the president of the United States. I can't even cackle like her. You know, this is almost as bad, but definitely, you know, because, well, what I'm about to say isn't true anyway, but the whole dust up over the suckers and losers comment, which never happened, was totally debunked. The fact that he wasn't even allowed, the President Trump in particular, that I'm referring to at the time, wasn't even allowed to fly to go look and visit the cemeteries because the Secret Service couldn't secure his transport. This is almost worse than that. It is worse because this is actually true, where Trump's thing was not. But anyway, what a nightmare. Just what a nightmare. I can't even, I can't even talk about embarrassment. I just really talk about embarrassment. All right. Speaking of even more, something else that's even more embarrassing, let's just I'm just going to point out really quickly, how stupid people are, especially in the Democrat Party. Now, how do I know that the Democrat Party is stupid? Well, I'll check this out once I come back from this break in terms of the Democrat Party being stupid. Speaking of educating our wonderful youth, you should educate our wonderful youth by providing them with this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution. To get one, go to constitution.americanperspective.online and you will find this fantastic book, which has 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are rip and water resistant, as well as real stitched binding, not some messed up glue type. This is a real stitched binding. They have a 100-year manufacturer's guarantee against materials and workmanship. For 100 years, you can go and send this back to the manufacturer, and you can have them, they will either fix it or replace it for free. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online and get your buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. And my youngest whiskey warrior has verified the contents inside, will pass a civics badge in Scouts. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online. That's constitution.americanperspective.online. Buy yours and support the show today. You can also check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings as well and support the show too. And I appreciate them for allowing me to be an affiliate sponsor of their products. All right, so how stupid are the Dems? Well, here's how stupid they are. Check this out. Okay, wait. I'm reminded, before we get to this, I got to tell you, I'm reminded of the film that James Garner was in, I believe. It was James Garner and Eddie Murphy. And Eddie Murphy ran because he happened to have the same name as James Garner. He ran as a congressman candidate. And that congressman candidate, he had the same name as the James Garner character who actually had the seat. He ran and he won just off of name recognition alone in the movie. And it's one of those things, it's a comedy where you kind of go through. James Garner died stooping his secretary in his office or whatever. But anyway, but this piece kind of reminded me of that and reminded me as to how stupid the Democrats are. Check this out in the Post-Millennial. A dead Democrat wins the New Jersey congressional primary after running uncontested. Uncontested. The gentleman's name it was Ronald Payne Jr., and he died in April at the age of 65 from a heart attack. He was the New Jersey congressman for their 10th district, and apparently he was running uncontested in the primary, in the Democrat primary. Now, not that this matters, but, Payne, who was a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, was the only name on the Democratic primary ticket. The deadline to file for the primary ballot was in March, and that was primary to his death, or prior to his death, I should say. So, we can't necessarily blame them on all this, and he apparently had held the seat since 2012 and was preceded by his father, who held the seat for 20 years, also before dying while serving the people of New Jersey. It's just, A special election is going to be held on July 16th to replace him. And the Democrat field already has like a dozen candidates seeking the office. But just the fact that people voted for him, like went and actually voted for him, is just, I mean, it just goes to show you how much people don't pay attention to politics. They don't pay attention to the news. They vote off of name recognition. And that is sad. That is just completely sad. Now, New Jersey's 10th district spans Newark, Hudson, Union, and Essex counties, and apparently has been held by a Democrat since 1947. But they didn't even know that their congressman died. They went ahead and voted for him in a primary. Yeah, they're just not paying attention. That's what it is. They just are not paying attention. All right. Well, you remember how I was telling you here last night, I believe I was telling you how the campaign or the trial for Donald Trump down in Florida had been held up and stuff. And you also have to remember too that I was discussing during the one of Trump's Supreme Court cases, Clarence Thomas had brought up the point that Jack Smith could have been unconstitutionally appointed as the special prosecutor. Now, that idea had been floated around by a couple of different people, legal minds, and they actually provided a writ of certiorari it was an amicus brief up to the Supreme Court with regards to the whole thing. So Judge Cannon apparently has now set a date and has reset the schedule for his documents case down in Florida. But on June 21st, the parties will argue on President Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment based on the unlawful appointment of special counsel. So, yeah, this is gonna be fun. So, Eileen Cannon yesterday shifted and scheduled in briefings on some major issues. And in this particular case, this new order puts special counsel Jack Smith's appointment and actions under a microscope while pushing back a 3-day hearing originally scheduled this month to hash out discovery issues that have dominated litigation since the indictment. On June 21st, the parties will argue on Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment based on the unlawful and unconstitutional, potentially, appointment of the special counsel. As the judge previously indicated, the briefs, the amici briefs, including the experts who advanced this legal theory, would be allowed to participate in the hearing. On June 4th, she issued an order allowing 3 attorneys who are representing 2 separate groups supporting and 1 opposing this motion to each make 30-minute arguments. And this whole thing is expected to take the entire day. Now, these are the same people who were the professors, if you recall, that argued that special counsel Robert Mueller's appointment was unlawful when he was tasked to investigate President Trump on Russian collusion allegations. So it's not just Jack Smith that they've done this to, or for. One defendant charged by Mr. Mueller had challenged his appointment, which was upheld by the District of Columbia Court and then once again on appeal. So whatever Judge Cannon's ruling, it can be expected to be appealed to a higher court. And while that's not guaranteed, the U.S. Supreme Court, while it's not guaranteed that the U.S. Supreme Court would agree to review the issue, during an April hearing, which is the one on presidential immunity, which is the one where Justice Clarence Thomas brought up the legal theory. So, yeah. So in anticipation of the hearing, Cannon also recently requested the parties file supplemental briefings on President Trump's arguments that the funding for Mr. Smith's office also violates the appropriations clause of the Constitution. Yeah, so we might be headed for a long road when it comes to this. A long road. Now, it's because of stuff like this that the Democrats are going to utilize the conviction. And on, I think it's July 14th, I think. I can't remember if it's June or July, but anyway, I think it's July 14th. Where where Trump may be sentenced to jail. And it's stuff like this that makes me think that they are really going to push hard for that to happen, because that's the only case that is having any kind of success at all in all of this. As I told you about Fani Willis being brought forth to potentially get disqualified for coverage of the Trump trial there in Georgia. So, yeah, there's also questions. There's also a constitutional question there, too, which I saw once and haven't seen since, which essentially is that Fani Willis may not have the jurisdiction to have brought those charges against Trump. And yes, it is July 11th for the sentencing. Thank you, Nana of JJS over on Rumble for making sure that I was correct in that. But anyway, so yeah, that's like I said last night in last night's episode, the news is not going great for Biden. The news is not going great for Biden at all. Speaking of great presidents, though, I do want to point out that there is a show. Now, I don't really talk about entertainment stuff very much here, but there is a movie apparently that's coming up. It's a biopic on what I believe is one of the greatest presidents, definitely in modern history, potentially in the running for the greatest president in history, although he's got a lot of competition there. But remember how I was telling you about the celebrities that are kind of turning on Joe Biden? Dennis Quaid's one of them. He mentioned that he wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden at all, joining his brother Randy Quaid in it. But here in the Daily Caller, this caught my eye. Dennis Quaid takes on one of his biggest roles in the upcoming Reagan biopic. So Dennis Quaid is going to act as Ronald Reagan in the self-named biopic Reagan, which is supposed to be coming to theaters August 30th of this year. So the producers of Reagan officially reached a distribution agreement with Showbiz Direct for widespread theatrical release of the film. This is the first full-length feature film to spotlight the life of the 40th U.S. president, and Quaid admitted this was a huge undertaking. Quaid said, "Portraying Ronald Reagan was an enormous challenge." The legendary actor spoke to the Daily Caller about the significance of this production. He continued, "I think what's going to appeal to the audience is you're getting the whole story. I've always been told bits and pieces of the stories from Reagan's life. This movie puts the whole story together. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not exactly sure that this is going to give the entire story, because how can you give an entire story and condense it down into like an hour and a half to 2 hours? But whatever. It also, this film will also star Penelope Ann Miller as Nancy Reagan, Mena Suvari as Reagan's first wife, Jane Wyman, Leslie Ann Down as Margaret Thatcher, and David Henry as a teenage Reagan, Kevin Dillon as Jack Warner, and the great John Voight as KGB agent Viktor Petrovich. Dennis Quaid's people also pointed out too that this is an important movie. This is Quaid speaking. This is an important movie, one of my most interesting roles. I'm really excited to work with the Showbiz Direct team. The biopic itself is set in the Cold War, was filmed in Oklahoma and California. Quaid's people told the Daily Caller. The plot line follows Reagan's journey from his childhood in Illinois to Hollywood and, of course, throughout the presidency of the United States. The film begins with Petrovich portrayed at the age of 90 and follows his character as he is approached by a Russian leader that wants to learn more about how the Soviet Union was lost, the Daily Caller has learned. Petrovich tells the tale of Reagan, who mockingly calls the Crusader. The plot follows Reagan's first major crisis at age 11, and the vivid scenes unfold on the big screen. This was originally slated for release in 2023, but because of COVID, productions, further delayed by Hollywood strikes, so on and so forth. So, yeah, this is definitely going to be interesting to see. Now, I'm really going to be interested. I have a biography, I guess. Maybe not an autobiography, but a biography. But of Ronald Reagan. So it'll be interesting to kind of compare and contrast the movie when it does come out for that. So we'll have to watch. I'm going to have to watch for that. That kind of thing I would be interested to go ahead and watch. So anyway, now I don't know if anybody caught this, but it's not just Biden that's getting some really bad news. It seems to be all of the left is getting bad news. Also don't miss the fact that Hunter Biden has actually been referred to by Congress. Hunter and Jim have also been referred by Congress over to the DOJ for perjury. Gee, that's really funny. But speaking of testifying, as far as that goes, I don't know if anybody caught this, but you remember that whole story that Cassidy Hutchinson talked about? The Cassidy Hutchinson talked about how, Trump lunged at the wheel of the beast and tried to grab a hold and steer it to Capitol Hill because, the Secret Service said it wasn't a good idea to go and do anything for that. All that time, and by the way, too, just so everybody knows, got to give Dan Bongino credit. He, used to be a Secret Service agent, had I won't say firsthand, but had like intimate knowledge of the inner workings of the Secret Service. And he immediately debunked and said, yeah, that's not possible. There's no way that that happened, so on and so forth. Well, guess what? You remember how Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger were like the token Republicans that were handpicked by Nancy Pelosi to sit on the January 6th committee? Apparently, according to this article in Twitchy, and actually I've heard it from a couple of other places. So Nancy Pelosi's handpicked January 6th committee appears even more corrupt. So we found out that they destroyed evidence. Okay. He destroyed evidence, and now we're also learning that they actually had the opportunity to interview the driver, the Secret Service driver, that day, and that Secret Service driver was willing to testify. He was like, hey, you know what? I'll testify. I'll testify on what happened. And the committee said no. At the same time that they were perpetuating that whole myth, the whole Cassidy Hutchinson testimony. Anyway, so yeah. Not only have they destroyed evidence, but they also kept and tried to delay the testimony of the driver for that day. And according to Jonathan Turley on X, he said that the transcript shows Cheney trying to explain the delay as due to the need for the Secret Service to produce all documents in the January 6th investigation. And then he continues with, yet she had no problem with making the false story public, even though through Cassidy Hutchinson before such supporting material was supplied. The false story, of course, went viral all over social media and other places. These people, they just don't get it. I also have to tell you too, don't forget that Cassidy Hutchinson, after she did her testimony, she also went through and like remodified her testimony. Yeah. She like changed it in many specific areas with regards to it. So yeah, this is just, if you actually believe in any way, shape, or form that January 6th was an insurrection after all of this bullshit that's running around, boy, I'm telling you, you guys, you are a special kind of stupid. Let's just put it that way. All right, I got one more ad on here. You know, I've been very critical of the green agenda. And yeah, very critical of the green agenda. And well, it appears that California is not trying to save the trees. They're going to kill trees in order to advance the green agenda. This article in Red State. For a new solar farm in California, sometimes you have to kill a tree in order to save a tree. So here's part of the problem. Apparently, they had a bunch of trees, Joshua trees in particular, which are the only type of tree that can grow out in the desert, by the way. But they went ahead and on the interstate going east towards Arizona's, there's a bunch of vast solar farms that blacken what used to be an open desert. Soon California will have another solar farm, But this one's actually going to destroy the environment first. So northeast of Edward Air Force Base sits the tiny town of Boron, Boron. The surrounding desert is home to desert wildlife, including the Joshua Tree. It will soon be home to a vast solar farm that is being owned by Atarina Solar Center. Now, Joshua trees can survive 200 years in the desert heat, but they're not going to survive in this particular project. So apparently about 3,500 Joshua trees have been uprooted and destroyed in order to make room for that solar farm. To mitigate the bad press, Aratina, I mispronounced it earlier, but Aratina is shredding the trees on site rather than piling them like so many corpses. The area is home to a fungus that causes valley fever, but if you don't get sick, what's the problem? The person in Red State asks. So they're going and they're killing off all these trees, which are native to Death Valley, by the way. And they've, that area, of course, has seen temperatures of upwards of 134 degrees. So, yeah, so I guess it's going to take up about 2,300 acres, but it's going to generate power for roughly 180,000 homes. Okay. But not the 2,300 people that are in Boron. Those homes aren't going to get any of the power for this. They're sending it off to the city. They're sending it off to the homes that are on the coast, where everybody, of course, has all those power-hungry Teslas for those EVs. At least that's what this person is saying. Also, too, by the way, don't know if anybody noticed, but in June of last year, and this is also inside the article, but in June of last year, a 14,000 panel, 5.2 megawatt solar panel farm called the Scottsbluff Community Solar Array in Nebraska was blasted by baseball-sized hail. There wasn't any question that it would be brought back online because the power company had no other choice. Leaving it would have been a PR disaster, worse than having the array destroyed by hail. It took them 7 months to bring it back online, and the cost itself wasn't revealed. But when it was returned to service, they said even damaged panels find purpose in recycling, embodying our dedication to environmental stewardship and a circular economy and renewable energy. We are proud to demonstrate that even in the face of challenges, our approach remains environmentally conscious and community focused. However, most of the solar panels that we use of course, come from China. And a professor of geochemistry explained that solar isn't all that environmentally green because it releases a nasty thing called nitrogen trifluoride. And what is NF3? That's what they call it. Impact on the environment? Well, it's reportedly 17,000 times worse for the atmosphere than the CO2 that we're trying to prevent. The other inconvenient facts are also like 80% of the silicon torn from the earth during the mining is eventually lost, making crystalline silicon. And a cancer biologist named David Nguyen noted that toxic chemicals associated with solar farms include cadmium telluride, cadmium gallium, copper indium selenide, and a bunch of other nasty toxins. Yeah, the even solar people, like people who love the solar folks, yeah, even they are admitting that there are chemical downsides to manufacturing the solar panels. like a byproduct called silicon tetrachloride, which is toxic, and if it's not handled properly will cause severe burns. And if it's inadvertently combined with water, it can create hydrochloric acid. Yeah. Why do you think China embraces all this? Why do you think China embraces all this stuff? Because they don't have all the environmental restrictions that we do. That's why they make all this stuff over there. And they don't care if a person gets burned over there either. Hell, they're like harvesting human body parts and stuff over there. Just green energy. Gotta love it. Green energy ain't so green, folks. Anyway, all right, I've come to the end of my time. Thank you all for joining. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account, and sign up for, or follow, I should say, the American Perspective broadcast channel. Remember, programming note, I will not be doing a show tomorrow night. I'm going to be enjoying in my daughter's graduation ceremonies and festivities in celebrating the fact that she is my last one out the door. Anyway, we'll be back Saturday right here on American Perspective, Saturday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Once again, have a great rest of your evening. Enjoy your Friday night, and we'll see you on Saturday. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.